We have to move now before they find the wreckage.
But the others... We can't just leave them behind.
The night the sky tore open, Daniel Cross was checking traps 40 miles from the nearest paved road. He'd moved to the Yukon 3 years ago after his last tour with Army Search and Rescue ended the way too many of his friendships had, in silence. Out here, the only thing that needed saving was himself, and some nights he wasn't sure he'd managed even that. Then the horizon caught fire. It wasn't a shooting star. Shooting stars don't scream, and they don't leave a trail of green plasma that bends the wrong way against the wind. Daniel watched it arc low over the tree line and slam into the ridge above Company Creek with a boom that knocked snow off every branch for half a mile. He should have called it in. He should have gone home, poured a drink, and let the Air Force sort out whatever had just fallen out of the sky. Instead, he grabbed his rifle, his med kit, and the sled, and he went to see who needed help. The crash site looked like nothing on Earth, because it wasn't. A hull of dark, faintly pulsing metal had gouged a 200-foot scar into the permafrost, and where it had finally stopped, it sat cracked open like an egg, steam hissing into the sub-zero air. Daniel found her in the wreckage. A girl, if girl was even the right word, pinned beneath a collapsed support strut, her skin the color of moonlight on water, shifting faintly with each shallow breath. 2 curved marks arced above her eyebrows like the ghost of wings. She was bleeding something that glowed faintly blue in the dark, and she was very clearly dying. Hey, look at me, Daniel said, working the strut free with the jack from his sled. I've got you. She didn't understand a word, but she looked at him and stopped fighting. He carried her out on his back through a whiteout, and by the time they reached his cabin, he'd already made a decision that would end his quiet life for good. He wasn't calling anyone. Not yet. Not until he knew who or what was hunting her, because something was hunting her. He'd seen the second ship, a sliver of black against the aurora, peel away just before impact. Whatever had shot her down wanted to make sure the job was finished. Her name, as close as human vocal cords could manage, was Nyra. It took 11 days for her to speak her first English word, and she chose it deliberately. Why? Daniel didn't have a clean answer. He wasn't the kind of man who'd ever describe himself as brave. But he told her the truth anyway. Because you needed help. That's usually enough of a reason where I'm from. Nyra studied him the way she studied everything, carefully, like she was cataloging a species she hadn't expected to respect. Over the following weeks, using a cracked tablet, hand signs, and a lot of patience, she told him fragments of her story in pictures. A world called Thren, its twin moons, its glittering orbital cities, and a civil war that had just swallowed her family whole. She wasn't a soldier. She was worse. From her hunch's perspective, she was a witness. She'd seen the ruling council murdered by their own security chief, and she carried, encoded somewhere in the neural lace beneath her collarbone, the only surviving proof of it. That was why they'd shot her down instead of simply letting her flee. Evidence doesn't get to run. The first drone found them on day 19. It came in low and silent over the ridge, matte black, no bigger than a raven, and it was scanning, actively scanning for Nyra's biosignature. Daniel put a rifle round through it before it could transmit, but the message was clear. Their hiding place had an expiration date. We move tonight, he told her, and for the first time, she didn't argue. They ran north, then west, trading his truck for a snowmobile, the snowmobile for a borrowed float plane flown by an old buddy from the service who took one look at Nyra, said nothing, and never asked a single question about the pay. That's the thing about people who've seen things they can't explain. They recognize it in others. 3 safe houses. 2 firefights that Daniel will describe if you ever get him drinking, only as a real bad week. One night where Nyra took a plasma burn meant for his skull and didn't so much as flinch afterward, because, she explained later, matter of fact, Thren physiology doesn't process pain the way humans do. It just files it for later. Somewhere in those brutal freezing weeks, something shifted between them. It wasn't romance, not exactly. Not yet. It was the specific, electric loyalty of 2 people who have decided, without ever saying so out loud, that the other one is worth dying for. The break came from an unlikely source, the drone's wreckage. Nyra rebuilt its transmitter from scrap in 4 days flat, turning a weapon meant to hunt her into a beacon calling for the one thing that could actually save her, a Thren resistance cell that had been searching known refugee corridors for exactly this signal. The response, when it came, was 2 words in a language made of light and tone: "We're close." But so was the enemy. The security chief who'd ordered the massacre had personally taken command of the hunt, and he wasn't sending drones anymore. He was coming himself, in a cloaked interceptor that Daniel's old radar equipment picked up only because Nyra taught him in real time exactly which frequencies to distrust. The extraction window was 90 seconds wide, in a clearing 11 miles from the nearest road, at 3047 a.m., in temperatures that would kill an unprotected human in 20 minutes. They made it with 4 minutes to spare. What happened in that clearing depends on who you ask. Daniel will tell you it was the longest 4 minutes of his life. Flares in the sky, his rifle empty, Nyra standing in the open on purpose, using herself as a beacon while he tried to drag her back under cover, and she wouldn't move because if the resistance ship couldn't see her, none of it mattered. He'll tell you the interceptor broke atmosphere right as the extraction ship did. And for 11 surreal seconds, 2 alien warships exchanged fire directly over a frozen Canadian valley, while a man from Fairbanks watched, frostbitten and half-deaf, wondering if this was the last thing he'd ever see. He'll tell you Nyra turned to him right before the tether caught her, said something in Thren that the translator never quite managed to render, something that means, roughly, debt that cannot be repaid, only carried forward, and then she was gone, swallowed by a light that left frost patterns burned into the snow in her exact shape. And he'll tell you that 6 weeks later, his satellite phone, a piece of hardware that has no business receiving alien signals, buzzed once in the middle of the night with a single message: "Thren is safe. Come see what you saved." Daniel Cross closed up his cabin 8 months ago. Nobody in town knows exactly where he went. His old CO says he mentioned something about settling a debt. His neighbor says the last time he saw him, Daniel was loading a bag with nothing in it but photographs, a sidearm, and a jacket that still had frostburns shaped like handprints on the collar. Some people think he's dead. Some think he just walked into the wilderness and never came back, the way Alaska sometimes takes people who go looking for something they can't name. But every few months, that satellite phone number pings a tower near Whitehorse, just once, just long enough to prove it still exists. Whatever's on the other end of that signal, whoever's still waiting for him out past the edge of the sky. One thing about Daniel Cross was always true long before any of this happened. He never once in his whole life walked away from someone who needed saving, even if saving her meant leaving everything he knew behind.